So, did a teenager really steal nuclear submarine plans? It sounds like something from a movie. You know, the kind of movie where a kid with glasses types super fast and hacks into a top secret government computer? It's a pretty wild thought. And honestly, my first reaction is just no. It feels impossible. Think about it for a second. We are talking about nuclear submarine plans. These aren't just blueprints for a treehouse. These are documents that detail some of the most advanced, most secret technology a country has. They show how a nuclear reactor works underwater. They show how a massive silent warship moves through the ocean. They explain how weapon systems operate. This kind of information is super sensitive. It can change the balance of power in the world. It's not something just sitting around on a shelf somewhere. But, still, the question pops up. Why would someone even ask that? Maybe it's because we hear stories about smart kids. We see news about hackers. Sometimes a kid gets into a company system, and sometimes those stories get a bit exaggerated. People start to wonder, could a young genius outsmart the biggest security systems in the world? Could they pull off something so massive? I think it comes from a place of curiosity. We like the idea of the underdog. We like the idea of someone unexpected doing something incredible. And a teenager stealing something as big as nuclear submarine plans, that's definitely incredible. It's almost unbelievable, but let's get real. The scale of security around nuclear submarine plans is just immense. It's not a simple lock and key situation. It's not just a password on a computer. We're talking about layers and layers of protection, physical guards, electronic monitoring. Really tough rules about who can even see these things. Imagine a building with no windows. Maybe it's underground, and inside that building there are more rooms. Each room has special locks. Each door needs a code, or a fingerprint scan, or maybe even an eyeball scan. And then in those rooms there are safes. Big, heavy safes made of steel. And inside those safes, there are the documents, the actual plans. And it's not just physical stuff. What about the digital side? If these plans exist on computers, they are not on the internet. They are not on any network that connects to the outside world. People call this gapped. It means there is no physical or electronic link. You can't just send an email with them. You can't download them from a cloud server. It's much, much harder than that. So, when someone asks if a teenager stole these plans, I picture a kid with a laptop. Maybe they are in their bedroom, they are typing away, they are breaking into a secure government server. They are downloading gigabytes of top secret data, and then they just walk away, maybe selling the plans to some shadowy figure. It's a cool story for a book or a movie, but in the real world, it's a fantasy. Security breaches happen, yes. But usually they are different. They are about data from credit card companies, or personal information from social media sites, or sometimes it's a government system, but it's often about general data, not the design of a nuclear weapon system. And when serious, top-level secrets get out, it's usually because of an insider. Someone who already has clearance, someone who works there, someone who makes a deliberate choice to leak information. Even then, it's a huge deal, and it's very rare for those people to be teenagers. Teenagers don't usually have the required security clearances. They don't typically work in these super secret facilities. They don't have the training to handle such information, and they certainly don't have the years of background checks needed to get close to such things. So the whole premise starts to fall apart when you look at the actual facts of how these things are protected. We are talking about national security here. This isn't a game. Countries spend huge amounts of money and effort to keep these secrets safe. It's not just about protecting a design, it's about protecting lives. It's about protecting the safety of a nation. And that means the people guarding these secrets are very good at their jobs. They are professionals. They take it very seriously. So, while the idea of a clever teenager outsmarting everyone is fun to think about, it doesn't really line up with the reality of how incredibly important and protected nuclear submarine plans are. It's almost like asking if a teenager flew to Mars on a homemade rocket. It's technically possible to build a rocket, but the scale of the task and the security of Earth's atmosphere and space travel make it a non-starter for a single kid. The same kind of thinking applies here. The challenge is just too big, the security too tight, and the access practically zero for someone so young. So for now, let's consider the question and dive deeper into why it's so unlikely. We need to understand what stands between the curious mind and such massive secrets. Okay, so let's really think about what it would take. Imagine you are a teenager and you want to steal nuclear submarine plans. Where would you even start? The answer is you probably wouldn't, because the security is just overwhelming. It's not just one layer of protection, it's many, many layers. Each one is designed to stop someone from getting close. First, there's the physical security. These plans aren't kept in an office building downtown. They are in very specific, highly secured government facilities. Think military bases or specialized research labs. Places that are often remote, places with high fences, maybe multiple fences, big fences topped with barbed wire or razor wire, and electric sensors, to detect if anyone even touches them. Then there are guards, real people, trained security personnel, sometimes soldiers. They are armed, they patrol constantly, they watch everything, every gate, every entrance, every corner of the perimeter. And these aren't just minimum wage mall cops, these are people who understand the importance of what they are protecting. They have strict orders, and they follow them. To get into one of these facilities, you need specific identification. Not just a school ID, you need a badge, a special badge. And that badge probably only works at certain doors. It might have a chip in it, it might be linked to your fingerprints or your face, or your retina scan. You would have to pass through multiple checkpoints. Each one verifies who you are. Each one makes sure you have a reason to be there. And if you don't get in. It's as simple as that, and once you are inside the main building, it doesn't get easier. The plans aren't just in a filing cabinet, they are kept in vaults. Think of a bank vault, but much stronger. These vaults are designed to withstand explosions. They are fireproof, they are soundproof. And they have their own security systems, alarms that go off if someone tries to force them open. The cameras watching every angle. Inside the vault, the plans themselves might be in special containers, maybe even secured to a desk with a cable, or locked in another, smaller safe. It's protection upon protection. It's like Russian nesting dolls of security. Each layer makes it harder to get to the core. Now, let's talk about the digital side, because plans these days are often digital too. But these aren't files on a regular computer network. These are on systems that are air-gapped. This means they are completely disconnected from the internet. They are not connected to any other network that leaves the secure facility. You cannot hack into them from your home computer. There is no Wi-Fi. There is no Ethernet cable leading outside. To get a digital file out, someone would have to physically go into the facility. And they would have to gain access to an air-gapped computer. They would have to plug in a USB drive or another storage device. But even then, those ports are probably disabled or heavily monitored, or only allow specific pre-approved devices, and those devices would have to be scanned for viruses and malware 100 times. How managed to plug in a device, the computer systems themselves are probably designed to detect any unauthorized activity. They would flag it instantly. An alarm would go off, security would be there in seconds. It's not just a firewall, it's an entire system built from the ground up to prevent data from leaving. And then there's the people factor. The people who work with these plans, they are not random employees. They are vetted for years. They go through intense background checks, they have top secret security clearances. This means the government knows almost everything about them. Their financial history, their family, their friends, their past, their habits. They are constantly monitored. Their behavior is watched, and they are often subject to polygraph tests, also known as lie detector tests, regularly. If anyone shows any sign of being a risk, they lose their access, they lose their job. And they might even face legal action. These people sign agreements. They understand the severity of what they are protecting. They know the consequences if they compromise that information, and they are loyal. Or at least, the system tries very hard to make sure they are. So, for a teenager to steal these plans, they would have to somehow bypass all of this. They would have to trick multiple security guards. They would have to pick high security locks. They would have to disable motion sensors. They would have to avoid cameras. They would have to penetrate a vault. They would have to get to an air-gapped computer. They would have to transfer the data. And then they would have to get out, all without anyone noticing. It's not a single task. It's a chain of hundreds of impossible tasks, and let's not forget the sheer knowledge needed. Even if you got the plans, what would you do with them? They aren't written in plain English. They are highly technical documents. They involve complex engineering, physics, and military specification. A teenager, even a smart one, probably wouldn't understand most of it. They would need a team of experts to interpret them. And if you found a team of experts, you'd be caught even faster. So the idea of a lone teenager working by themselves, overcoming all these layers of physical, digital, and human security, it's just not realistic. It's a mountain that's too high to climb. The resources required to even try something like this would be massive. far more than any single teenager could ever gather. It really makes you see why this scenario just doesn't fit with how the real world works for national secrets. The system is designed to be impenetrable, and for good reason. It has to be. Okay, so we talked about how tough the security is. It seems impossible, but let's just pretend for a minute. If a teenager did steal these plans, what kind of kid would they be? They wouldn't be your average high school student, not the kid worried about homework or who to sit with at lunch. This would have to be someone truly extraordinary and incredibly lucky or incredibly misguided. Let's think about what kind of skills they would need. First, there's the computer genius angle. We hear about these kids, the ones who can code before they can drive, the ones who see computer systems like puzzles. Maybe this teenager's a prodigy, someone who understands networks and encryption better than most adults. They might be able to find a tiny crack in the system. But remember, we said these systems are air-gapped. So a remote hack from their bedroom is probably out. This means our hypothetical teen would have to be physically present. How would they get in? Maybe they are a social engineering master. This means they are really good at tricking people. They can pretend to be someone they're not. They can gain trust. They can convince guards or employees to let them into places they shouldn't be. This isn't about hacking computers, it's about hacking people. They might wear a fake uniform. They might carry a convincing fake ID, they might have a very believable story, but even a social engineering genius would struggle with the multiple layers of human scrutiny. Everyone at these facilities is trained to be suspicious, to check everything. Or maybe this kid has an in. Maybe a parent or a close relative works at one of these top secret facilities. This is perhaps the most believable, yet still highly improbable scenario. But even with a relative working there, that relative would have their own security clearance. They would be monitored. They would have very limited access themselves. They wouldn't just be able to walk into a vault and grab plans. And if they did, it would be noticed immediately. The relative would be ruined. And the teenager, well, they would be in even bigger trouble. No parent would willingly risk that for their kid. And most access is controlled by multiple people anyway. One person can't just open a vault. Then there's the incredibly rare physical infiltration specialist, a teenager who is like a ninja, super quiet, super agile, able to bypass physical security measures. Like something out of a spy movie, they would know how to get over fences without triggering alarms. How to move through laser grids. How to pick high-tech locks. But where would a teenager learn these skills? These are skills developed by Special Forces soldiers over years, not something you pick up in your spare time after school. And what would be the motivation? Why would a kid risk everything for this? Maybe they are just doing it for the challenge. They think it's a game. They want to prove they are the smartest. They want to show that even the biggest security systems can be beaten. That's a very teenager kind of motivation, the thrill of rebellion, pushing boundaries. But the consequences here are not detention. They are federal prison, or worse, or maybe they are ideologically driven. They believe the information needs to be public. They think the government is doing something wrong. They are trying to expose a secret, like a whistleblower, but a very young and incredibly reckless one. But again, the understanding of what they are doing, the technical documents, the geopolitical implications, this is a lot for a teenager to grasp. Another possibility, and a dark one, is coercion. Maybe they were forced. Maybe someone threatened their family. Someone with serious power, someone who recognized the kid's skills and exploited them. This makes the teenager a victim as much as a perpetrator, but it still requires that initial skill set and the ability to operate within such a high-stakes environment. And think about the tools they would need. Special software, lock-picking tools, fake documents, high-tech gadgets. Where would a teenager get all of this, and how would they fund it? These things cost money. A lot of money. More money than a typical part-time job could ever cover. It also requires immense planning. Months, maybe years of research. Studying the facility. Learning the routines of the guards. Understanding the shift changes, knowing where every camera is. How would a teenager do that without being noticed? An adult lingering around a military base would raise suspicion quickly. This combination of skills, access, resources, and motivation in a single teenager stretches credulity to its absolute breaking point. It's like imagining a teenager winning an Olympic gold medal in every single sport simultaneously without ever having trained. It's a fun thought to play with in fiction, but in the real world of national security, it just doesn't make sense. The universe of a teenager and the universe of top-secret nuclear submarine plans are simply too far apart. Let's say, against all odds, a teenager did manage to steal nuclear submarine plans. what would happen next? The immediate aftermath would be absolute chaos. It wouldn't just be a small news story. It would be a global earthquake. First, the discovery. Someone would notice the plans are missing. Or a breach in the digital system would be detected, or a physical sensor would go off. The alarm bells would not just ring, they would scream. Every single person connected to that facility, that department, that project would be interrogated. Their lives would be turned upside down. The facility would go into immediate lockdown. No one in, no one out. Every inch of the place would be searched. Every computer log would be scrutinized. Every camera footage would be reviewed. It would be an intense, suffocating investigation. Then the government would realize what happened. This isn't just a stolen car. This is a matter of national security. The president, the prime minister, whoever is in charge, would be informed immediately. This would be a crisis at the highest level. A massive manhunt would start, not just for the plans, but for the person who took them. Every intelligence agency would be involved. The FBI, the CIA, national security agencies, all of them would be activated. They would use every resource at their disposal: satellites, surveillance networks, human intelligence. No stone would be left unturned. The teenager, if they were identified, would become the most wanted person on the planet. Their face would be everywhere, not on social media for viral fame, but on secret watch lists. Every airport, every port, every border crossing would be alerted. They would have nowhere to hide. Their life, as they knew it, would be over, instantly. If they were caught, the legal consequences would be unlike anything most people could imagine. This wouldn't be juvenile court. This would be federal court. Charges of espionage, treason, theft of government property, compromising national defense. The sentences for these crimes are incredibly severe. We're talking decades in prison, maybe even life. They would be treated as an enemy of the state, regardless of their age. But it's not just about catching the thief. The bigger problem is the plans themselves. Who has them now? Were they sold? To whom? Is another country suddenly going to have access to highly sensitive military technology? This would trigger an international incident. Diplomatic relations would strain. Allies would be concerned. Adversaries would be on high alert, trying to figure out if they could exploit the situation. The world's intelligence communities would be in a frenzy. The country whose plans were stolen would have to take drastic measures. They might have to assume the plans are compromised. This could mean redesigning parts of the submarine, or changing operational tactics, or strengthening other defenses. This costs billions of dollars. And it takes years. It would set back their military capabilities significantly. Think about the panic within the naval forces. Their submarines, once considered secret weapons, might now have their weaknesses exposed. Their stealth capabilities might be known. Their defense systems might be understood by potential enemies. This could put crews at sea in grave danger. It could change how they operate completely. There would be political fallout. The government responsible for the security breach would face immense pressure. There would be calls for resignations. Public trust would be shattered. International trust would be damaged. Other countries might question their ability to protect sensitive information. This could impact alliances, trade deals, and overall global standing. And if the teenager somehow managed to avoid capture for a while, the pressure on them would be unbearable. They couldn't spend the money, they couldn't tell anyone, they couldn't live a normal life. Every shadow would seem like a pursuer. Every phone call would feel monitored. The weight of what they had done, the sheer scale of the global reaction, would crush them. The idea of a teenager just walking away from something like this, getting rich or becoming a hero, is pure fantasy. There is no escaping the kind of resources and determination that would be deployed to recover such vital information and to capture the person responsible. The whole world would shift its focus, so the aftermath would not be a quiet success story for a clever kid. It would be a cataclysm, a global crisis, and a life sentence both legally and psychologically for anyone involved. The sheer weight of the consequences makes the act itself even more improbable, because anyone, even a reckless teenager, would have to understand the immense, crushing price of such an act. It wouldn't just be a prank or a daring heist. It would be an act of war, essentially, against their own nation, with repercussions felt around the globe for decades. So we've gone through the layers of security. We've imagined the kind of extraordinary teen who might try such a thing. And we've thought about the massive fallout if it ever happened. Now, let's bring it all back to reality. The simple answer to the question, did a teenager steal a nuclear submarine's plans, is almost certainly no. And it's no for very good reasons. The reality of national security is just so far removed from the myths we see in movies and read in books. Pop culture loves the idea of the brilliant underdog, the kid who outsmarts the system. The lone wolf hacker who can break any code. It makes for compelling entertainment. We root for them. We admire their smarts. It's exciting to imagine, but real life doesn't work like that. The systems protecting nuclear submarine plans are not like the ones protecting a school network or a small company website. They are built with national survival in mind. They are designed to withstand attacks from well-funded, highly sophisticated state actors. Not just a clever kid with a laptop. Think about the resources involved. A government spends billions of dollars on designing a nuclear submarine. They spend billions more on building it. And they spend even more billions on protecting its secrets. This isn't just about money. It's about highly trained people, top engineers, elite security personnel, advanced technology, constant vigilance. And remember the idea of layers. It's not one lock. It's hundreds of locks. It's not one guard. It's a whole army of guards. It's not one firewall. It's a completely disconnected system. Each layer is meant to catch what the previous one missed. It's redundancy on a scale that is hard to comprehend. For a teenager to succeed, they would have to defeat every single one of those layers. Not just one or two. Every single one. And they would have to do it perfectly, without making a single mistake. Because even one small slip-up would trigger alarms. And once the alarm is triggered, the game is over. And then there's the question of motivation and opportunity. As we discussed, a teenager typically has neither. They don't have the security clearances. They don't have the access. They don't have the decades of specialized training or the connections needed to even begin to understand the complex world of military intelligence and espionage. People who compromise such secrets are usually insiders, people who already have access. People who have gone through years of vetting, and even then, it's a monumental undertaking for them, often involving years of planning and communication with foreign intelligence agencies. It's not something someone decides to do on a whim. So, while the story of a teenager stealing nuclear submarine plans is exciting, it falls apart under scrutiny. It's a powerful myth, but not a reality. It taps into our fascination with genius, with rebellion, with the idea that anything is possible. But it ignores the brutal, unforgiving reality of national security. The systems are too robust. The people are too vigilant, the consequences are too dire, the technical knowledge required is too specialized. The physical access is too restricted, and the digital defenses are too strong. So if you hear a story like that, or if you read it somewhere, I think it's safe to assume it's either a fictional story, an urban legend, or a heavily exaggerated tale. It's a fun thing to imagine, and it makes for great movies, but it is not how the real world of protecting top-tier military secrets operates. The gap between a talented teenager's capabilities and the impenetrable fortress built around nuclear submarine plans is simply too vast. There's no magical backdoor. There's no single weakness that a lone person, let alone a teenager, could exploit without an army of resources and a lifetime of training. It's important to separate the cool stories from the cold, hard facts. And the fact is, the security surrounding nuclear submarine plans is designed to be teenager-proof and then some. It's designed to be adversary nation-proof. And in the very rare instances where a breach does occur, it is a massive, complex operation, almost never involving a kid, and always with devastating consequences for all involved. The pervasive nature of technology in our daily lives and the stories we see about young hackers exposing corporate flaws can sometimes blur the lines between what's possible for a simple company website and what's possible for a fortified military stronghold. It makes sense why the idea might take root. We see kids who are better with computers than their parents. We see stories about vulnerabilities, and then we project that onto the most extreme scenarios. But that projection doesn't account for the unique nature of military-grade security. The level of classification for nuclear submarine plans is top secret or even higher, often designated with special access programs. This isn't just a label. It defines a whole ecosystem of protection. It dictates who can see it, where it can be stored, how it must be transmitted, and even how it must be destroyed if compromised. Every single step is rigorously controlled. The smallest deviation would be flagged. And consider the sheer volume of data. A nuclear submarine is an incredibly complex machine. Its plans are not just a few pages. They would be thousands upon thousands of highly detailed schematics, diagrams, engineering specifications, material lists, and operational manuals. Even if a teenager somehow managed to get their hands on a digital copy, the file size alone would be immense. Transferring it, especially from an air-gapped network, without detection would be a feat bordering on the miraculous. Plus, understanding such data requires years of specialized education. A teenager might be a genius, but they wouldn't have degrees in nuclear physics, naval architecture, advanced metallurgy, or cryptology. The plans wouldn't make immediate sense to them. They would be a collection of highly technical symbols and jargon that require expert interpretation. So, even if they had the plans, what would they do with them? They wouldn't be able to read them in any meaningful way, let alone explain them to anyone who would pay for them. The value of the plans is tied to understanding them, and that knowledge is locked behind years of study and experience. So, the notion stays firmly in the realm of fiction. It's a compelling narrative, tapping into themes of youth, rebellion, and overwhelming odds. But it is built on a foundation of impossibilities when confronted with the actual measures taken to protect the secrets of nuclear submarines. These secrets are guarded with a seriousness that transcends imagination, a seriousness that few outside the world of national defense can truly grasp. It's a security posture built not just to deter, but to absolutely prevent such a scenario from ever becoming real. And for that, we can probably all be thankful.